Hello and welcome. Here we are yet again at I Didn't Sign Up for This. Carrie, here we go. What are we talking about?
Hey there, Tim. I want to talk today about excuses. I think everybody's got one, and I think we need to talk about it.
All right. Sounds good. What is an excuse?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for you to avoid an ultimate result that you think you want. And I'm not sure, we can dive in a little bit on what contributes to the excuse, but I think that when you have a goal in mind, it's very easy to hold on to things that will actually prevent that goal for whatever reason. And we can talk about that a little bit. But an excuse is an opportunity for you to escape the desired result. So it's like a little side street. You're giving yourself an out. I could do this, but everybody hates me. Or I could do this, but I won't be happy. Or everybody's out to get me. What do you think?
I have seen that in people and in clients and different things that I've done over the years pretty extensively. I have a long and storied history with the notion of the excuse, truth be told. But you made a very interesting point, which is to say it's a way out, or a way people give themselves a way out of not getting what it is that they think they want. So the implication there is that somebody only executes an excuse to keep from having to do something that, it's culturally appropriate or it's politically appropriate, or maybe from a career standpoint or a marriage. I obviously want, insert thing you want here, right? I obviously want a happy marriage, or I obviously want a thriving career, obviously, but I just can't have it because of here's my excuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying that these people truly don't want the thing that they're finding excuses not to have?
I don't think that it's that. I think that they do want it, but they're giving themselves a back door to escape if it fails.
Oh, okay.
So ultimately, I couldn't succeed because Barbara stood in my way. Or I couldn't succeed because Mark didn't give me all of the information that I needed to help me be successful. So it's really not on me and my failure or my inability to achieve my goal. It's actually everybody else's fault. I'm doing good. It's the little story we tell ourselves.
Okay. All right. And so basically this boils down to personal responsibility.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. It's an ability for us to not be responsible for the ultimate outcome if it doesn't go the way that we want it to.
Because we don't have confidence in it.
Right.
So people don't really have an excuse problem so much as they have a confidence problem.
I think that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah, no, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I've seen that time and time and time again. Ultimately, if you are making excuses, leaving yourself a way out. I've got a great example. I used to, as you well know, I used to travel around the southeastern United States playing tournament tennis a little bit, Nothing too terribly special, just like crappy little, small town opens and little qualifying events and whatever. Ultimately, it was not God's calling for me, I suppose. Although I still have a beef with him about it. But I could always tell the guy that I could likely outperform because he would do these kinds of things that you're talking about. I would have somebody come up to me and tell me about, their ingrown toenail or their pulled hamstring and basically every time somebody would mention whatever their weakness is or their flaw was, I would just kind of look down and smile, right? Because I didn't want him to see me smiling, number one, and number two, I knew that this guy had already decided to lose. I knew that it did not matter if I was a better player or not. It didn't really matter because this guy's already building in his excuse. And I wouldn't win all of those matches by any stretch of the imagination, But as a rule, I could. As a rule, I could outperform when somebody would decide beforehand what their excuse is going to be ultimately should they lose the match. And of course, I've seen it in business. Of course, you see it in business, That goes back to, something we've talked about before, which is I have this one standing excuse. Anytime I catch myself making an excuse for missing a deadline or not producing or not performing or whatever it is, whatever obligation that I have placed upon myself, made an obligation to someone else, this will be done by the X date. I invariably, if I miss, there is a backstory, right? Because there literally is a backstory, right? There's always a backstory. There's a backstory to how I, got here today from going to the grocery store, right? If I'm 15 minutes late for dinner, well, here's the story. But the fact of the matter is the story does not matter. Either you are on time or you are not. Either you produce or you don't. Either you perform or you don't. And the backstory doesn't matter. And so I have this little rule of thumb wherein I will talk about the fact that I have lint on my socks. I will replace whatever the backstory is, missed the plane or the attorney's called or this happened or that, whatever it was, right? And I will just, when I feel myself going into story mode to explain to somebody why something did not happen the way I promised it would, I will just stop myself cold, look down and say, I've got lint on my socks, right? And my friends and clients, people that I've worked with for years, they know exactly what that means. That means there is a great big convoluted, complicated, one in a million backstory that's not all of that. That is not all that interesting. That is not all that fascinating. And I'm not going to bore you with it. At the end of the day, we dropped the ball. And so now we're going to pick the ball up and try to move it down the field. And so the story gets replaced with lint on my socks. And I think lint on my socks can replace absolutely any excuse in the world. You just say, the thing about an excuse is the excuse only has to be good enough for you, right? That person that you have committed yourself to, that you said, hey, I'm going to have the report done, or I'm going to have this, built, or I'm going to have that sold, or whatever it is, right? That person who has been left in the lurch, has been left hanging because you did not live up to the commitment that you made, does not care what your backstory is. It's just not even relevant. And so it may as well be lint on your socks.
Well, and I'll tell you that I think that excuses are built on fear. And it can be fear of failure, but just as much it can be fear of success.
Okay.
You lean on those things, or fear of change, or just even taking responsibility for your decisions and your choices. I will tell you that most people, when they make a decision and they want to pursue uncharted territory, the ones who successfully maneuver those waters and move into where they want to be in their life, they release the excuses. Excuses will pop up every time. Everybody has lint on their socks. Absolutely, but it's the people that will remove the excuses and take the responsibility for their own actions and understand that excuses now lead to massive regrets later on. They're the people who will get where they want to go.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I can see that.
We construct these comfort zones. So we create these arenas where we're comfortable and where things come naturally, and there's no mental exercise. Although there's no growth opportunity, there's really you don't necessarily need to put forth an effort. People do it in their personal relationships. They do it in their business. They do it in their, even career and school. Like, I remember when I was in school, if there was a class that I found easy, heck yeah, I'll take more of those classes.
Right.
I avoided the classes that stretched my mind because I just wanted to float through school and get where I needed to be so that I could, get that corporate job and move up that corporate ladder. And so I stayed in my comfort zone.
And so what is a working strategy to actually help somebody? How can you identify when you are just making excuses?
I would say that if you can sit down with someone and you can identify their ultimate goal, if it's career, their ultimate job, what that looks like for them. And there is actually an exercise where you can take and you can start to write out all of the excuses as to why you can't have it. And then you turn that negative response into a positive one. So you focus on why I can have it. So, I would like to go back and get my master's degree, but there's not enough time. Well, that's not true. There is enough time. You just have to allocate the time. right? So everybody has time. Even a mother that works and has children could carve in time. It might take leaning on people in her life to help her with her kids, or maybe it requires taking a little vacation time here and there to balance out the work and study. But there is always time. There's always time to create a plan that will lead you to your ultimate outcome if it is important enough to you, and if you are willing to step outside of that comfort zone and move away from the excuses you put in your own path. And the thing is when you make excuses that keep you from moving forward, you're actually settling for where you are. And that leads to a whole different belief system on your ability to achieve and your success. And I don't think people understand that, because we get so wrapped up, well, I don't want to leave this job. If I leave this job, I'll lose my vacation. If I leave this job, I have to go learn a new one, or how about if I leave this person that I married that I can't stand anymore, that can't stand me, and we're sleeping in different rooms, oh my gosh, I might have to spend a Valentine's Day alone. Heaven forbid, or what if I don't meet anybody else? I'm not going to meet anybody else, so I'll just stick with the crap relationship that I come home to every night. That's an excuse, because you're rocking your own boat. And it's very easy for us as human beings. You and I have had this conversation before, and you have a lot of insight on this, probably more than I do. But the fact that we as human beings always look for the path of least resistance. But this is your life. So I get that when you're trying to maintain your place on the food chain, or you're working towards just kind of making an okay life. Do you want an okay life, or do you want a great life? Because the path of least resistance isn't always the best approach when you're trying to make something new and you're trying to move out of your comfort zone. You gotta shake it up.
Right. That's a hard one, though. That's a hard one to overcome, because people don't like to think of themselves as always looking for the path of least resistance. But we always are. That's just the human reaction. And at some point you have to back up and say, am I looking for the path of least resistance long-term versus short-term, right? Because I don't necessarily want to feel like I'm looking for the path of least resistance on the short term, but ultimately that's what mankind does. And I'll give you an example. That guy who comes home miserable from work, cracks open a beer, kicks the dog, whatever the prototypical cliche is for the person who is unhappy with his life, but does not want to argue with his wife one more day, does not want to have to help the kid with trigonometry one more time. And so he's just looking for an escape. I just want to sit here and blob out in front of the television and, become mildly intoxicated on whatever your particular flavor is. And it's not just always beer, right? That's whatever it takes to help you unwind. And I just want to sit here and drink a nice rosé and watch the Lawrence Welk marathon.
Oh, man. That brings back memories of my grandma's house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plastic covered furniture, nicotine, and Lawrence Welk.
Yeah, I think hers wasn't a rosé, though. I think hers was just like a bourbon.
Straight bourbon.
But nonetheless, the moral of that story is whatever your particular flavor is, that's what you do. And people go home and they take that path of least resistance in the short run, but they're not backing up. They're not gaining perspective on their lives to realize that is in no way the path of least resistance. That is, in fact, the path of greatest resistance if they have established what they want out of life and they're clear on it, Mm-hmm. Clarity is the ultimate goal. If you get clear on what it is you want, you talk about the person who is like coming home to, the wife he can't stand and he just stays in it for the kids and, whatever that cliche is. That guy's problem, believe it or not, is not just seeking the path of least resistance. He doesn't have a clue what he wants. And so he has created something by default, something that's just come to him. He hasn't designed his reality, He's just accepted whatever has landed in his lap on so many fronts. And when you are simply accepting whatever the default brings you, I promise you it will not inherently bring you happiness. It just doesn't,
Right.
Slang.
I agree with that.
Yeah. When your order back at the restaurant, your order is just, bring me whatever the cook's slinging tonight, or bring me whatever's in the fridge. I don't care. I just need to eat something. So ultimately, that cook, he wants to be successful in life. He wants to make money. And so he's not going to bring you the filet mignon and the creme brulee, right? He's going to bring you the chicken hearts. He's going to bring you whatever's left, right? He's going to bring you the shit because you're willing to accept the shit and you're willing to pay for it. And believe it or not, you're paying the same thing. Whether you eat the shit or you eat the filet, you're going to pay the same price. You don't realize that. You don't realize that. And most people don't realize that. It's the old Zig Ziglar line from way back. And man, this really dates me. Nonetheless, Zig Ziglar has this little poem that he would quote back in, years and years ago, back when Zig was alive. Remember when he was alive? That was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Good times.
Good times, yeah. But no,
he had a lot more quotes when he was alive.
A lot more quotes back when he was alive. But no, Zig Ziglar had this quote wherein he would say, "I bargained with the world for a penny, only to learn dismayed that any price I would have asked, the world would have gladly paid."
Wow.
And that is just thick with cheese. There's cheese all over that.
But it's awesome. I love it.
And there's truth all over that.
Yeah.
You can take the truth and dip it in cheese and it's still the truth. And so what happens is when you are willing to accept whatever is in the bottom of that refrigerator and you think you're paying a lower price, but you're not. You're not, and here's why. It's because by accepting whatever comes your way, you are willing to accept whatever comes your way on virtually every front of your life. So do you think you're going to get the big job, the big desk, the corner office? You're going to get the big fat bonus or the big fat paycheck if you're unwilling to figure out a way and go hustle and get it, create the value? You're not. You're going to take whatever life comes your way. You're going to take whatever life hands you. And so if you would stop taking the default and start designing your life, then you would have plenty of money to buy the filet or whatever you're interested in, and you wouldn't be eating whatever is in the sausage that's left over after everybody else has already eaten the good stuff.
Right.
It's a belief system and a paradigm. It's what you believe, and it's getting clear on what you want. Most people don't have what they want because they don't have a clue what that is.
And I think that's a good point. So that's actually a starting point, is defining what you want and being specific. So what you ask for and what you move towards is going to give you that end result. It's going to give you a place to aim for.
Right.
And I think after that, I'm a big fan of pros and cons. So anytime I'm trying to make a decision, I will list out the benefits, potential obstacles, or the cons. Why shouldn't I go for this? And, it's my personality. I go for stuff all the time. Because when I put it in my head that it's something I want to do, I go for it and I don't look back. Because if I can feel it and I can see it, then I can obtain it. And I'm a fixer. I'm a problem solver. And so if you give me a problem, I'm going to chart out a potential solution, actually a couple of different solutions, and get to the right one within a few minutes, max. But I'm not every person, and every person is not me. And so one thing that you can do is make that list. And I've had different opportunities to do that in my life, where if I've been looking for a particular place to live, I would actually make a list of all the things that I needed in that home. And I would outline all of that. And they absolutely would. I would keep looking until I found it, or it found me. So if you don't have a place to start, if you don't have a vision of where you want to go, you're like a boat without an anchor. You're just drifting out there somewhere.
Right.
Making excuses till you land on some shore somewhere. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants their grave to say, He made excellent excuses.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I mean, that's my old adage. You can either have results or you can have like a really good story as to why you didn't get the results.
Right.
P.S. Nobody gives a fat rat's ass about your story.
Well, and that's the thing, though. There are a lot of stories out there that are never told. They're never told because they're not interesting. Excuses are not interesting. Most people...
Generally...
What were you going to say?
No, dude, wait, hold on. That's a T-shirt, right? Excuses are not interesting.
Oh, that's funny.
That is. I'm going to print some of those up and put them on the website.
All right.
Excuses are not interesting. Anyway, yeah, no, excuses, you're right. Excuses are not interesting. We don't go and write or read epic poems about, Homer and how the sirens got him, or how, the monsters overcame Hercules, right?
Right.
Well, turns out Hercules had lint on his socks that day, and so the Hydra got him, right? Nobody's reading that epic poem. Nobody cares about your failure and your excuses. They only care about your successes and your wins, and how, regardless of whatever it was, you just kept going and you just kept pushing and you made something happen for yourself in your life. You achieved what you wanted. And you achieved what you wanted because you knew what the hell that was.
Well, and I think if you want to see what people like, watch any sports movie out there. Watch any sports movie where the team came from behind and took the win. They were the underdog. They never made excuses. When they're in the locker room and the coach is giving them that last pep talk and it's the fourth quarter of the game, it's not, well, Harold, I know you've got lint on your socks, so we're just going to give this one to the other team.
That's exactly right.
See you next week.
That's exactly right.
I think that, I think there are a lot of excuses. I think we're also taught by a lot of people in our lives. I mean, I remember growing up hearing, well, we want to do this, but there's just not enough money. Or I want to take you on that family vacation, but I just don't have enough time. Okay. And that's the norm. That's the norm. One thing about my sister that I absolutely love is regardless of what they have going on, she and her husband take their kids on a family vacation every year without fail. It doesn't matter their income. It doesn't matter the time of year and how much time she can take off. They travel somewhere and they have a family vacation. There is no excuse for that. That is the norm. So perhaps you envision where you want to be and you make the pursuit of that your normal, everyday endeavor. There's no room for excuses when you do that. If you truly believe that you can obtain your ultimate goal, there's no room for excuses.
Which was my point. We don't get what we want. We don't get what we need. We get what we are unwilling to settle for less on.
Yeah.
Because people will settle. People will settle. But you hit a point where I just won't settle for that, right? And so you can't have the filet, but there's some old sirloin in the fridge. Well, you can't have the sirloin, but there is some chicken. Well, there's some chicken gizzards, right?
Yeah.
That's meat, technically. Well, there's some chicken skin, right? You know what? We have some leftover chopped up chicken feathers and fish scales. You could probably digest that, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because everybody hits a point. I can keep going down that literal food chain. I can keep going down, and every one of us will hit a point where you just say, I'm not going to eat fried rat tails. I'm not going to do it. It's disgusting.
It's time to move to a different restaurant.
Yes, definitely. It's definitely time to look for a different restaurant. But yeah, seriously. People hit a point where they're just not willing to settle for anything less than X or whatever it is. And so if you can simply move that bar up, then everything else you need to achieve will follow. It's like, I absolutely will not eat anything less than the creme brulee. That's my dessert, and I'm not going to have anything less. And if you don't serve it, I'm going somewhere else. And whatever you charge for it is what I will have to pay at the expense of other things in my life. So what happens is you say, look, I'm the creme brulee eater. I eat it every time. I've got to have it. Well, it's expensive. That's right. So I need to make more money. Well, how are you going to do that? I got to provide more value at work or more value at my business. I've got to work harder, or I've got to work longer. I've got to work smarter. I've got to do all three of those things. I've got to produce more somehow, because I just will not eat anything less than the creme brulee. By the time the dinner's over, I want a sweet, creamy, crunchy, toffee-coated treat, and I will not eat anything less. And if you keep doing that, you're very clear on what you want, your standards inherently begin to rise, and as your standards rise, your income follows and your success follows. It's when you are unclear about what you want that you get whatever's left in the bottom of that fridge. And guess what? Ultimately, that must be what you want, because you're not putting the time and effort into going and getting anything more.
Well, and how about the excuse it's just not the right time? You know, that falls in line with procrastination. So let's say that we have somebody who's identified their goal. They've removed some of the other excuses like time, money, fear of failure, fear of success. Well, it's just not the right time. That is probably my least favorite excuse. So I really want to win the lottery, but it's just not the right time. So I'm not even going to buy a ticket. It's not time for me to get out of that bad relationship. I'm going to wait another 20 years when I really look like shit and try to date then.
That's it. That's it. Oh, yeah.
But it's, obviously this isn't all about relationships, but it's not the right time for me to look for another job. I'm going to wait until I hate everyone in this building, and then I'm going to see what else is out there. I mean, you can really apply that to any scenario in your life. And the truth is the time is now, because you are not guaranteed tomorrow, right?
That's right. The only reason you do not have exactly what you want is because you are not open to receiving it. You're not ready for it. And that can be the love of your life or $100 million or whatever. You are not ready for it. You're absolutely not ready for it. And when I say you, I mean me as well, right? I'm not going to pretend that I have the absolute, ultimate, inexplicably marvelous life. I am very happy. I really am. I'm very happy with my life, and I am very happy with the way things are going. I'm very comfortable. Arguably, one could argue that I live a pretty comfortable lifestyle, and I'm not having to work my guts out, 10 hours a day or even 8 hours a day. Sometimes I do. Oftentimes I do, because I enjoy what I'm doing, right? I love the process. But I've got my own flaws. That's why I say earlier, I will find myself saying, okay, so there we are. We're at the airport. LaGuardia is shut down because the snowstorm's coming in, and then I had lint on my socks. Just let it go, right? And so I had to bend down and pick the lint off my socks. What else could I do? I had lint on my socks.
Fiji will just have to wait for another day.
Yeah. I looked down, I saw the lint, and I thought, it's just not the right time.
It's always the right time. And I can't stress that enough. But I will tell you that what it boils down to is loving yourself enough to give yourself the life you deserve. You have got to love yourself. You have got to feel worthy of the filet versus the chicken skin.
Right.
That's a whole different layer that we're pulling back in this conversation. But if you don't love yourself enough to see what you deserve, try looking through someone else's eyes. Or you've got to build that up. You have to believe that you deserve it. The only way that happens is through practice. And it takes a lot to get to that point for some people. Some people know. Some people just automatically love themselves and they deserve what they deserve, and they're going to go out and get it. And good for them. You don't judge them. You learn from them. You have to give to yourself before you can give to anybody else in your life, or before you can take that journey. It's the only thing that's going to blow up those excuses and get them out of the way. And it takes a long time for some people. And it takes a lot, but it's something attainable. You have to identify, number one, where you are and where you want to be. And then you have to love yourself enough to make that the most important thing. And it's not about being selfish. I said something to somebody the other day and about loving themselves, and they're like, wow, you're one of the most selfish people I know. Absolutely. If it comes down to loving me first, I will do that every time, because I can't love you if I don't love me.
Right. And that goes back to just taking care of your immediate needs first, which you absolutely have to do. You know, I claim to be like the original guy to use this analogy, and then this analogy flooded forth through the entire earth. And if I had thought of this analogy after Twitter, I would probably get credit for it to this day. But this goes back years and years and years when I'm just seriously kid, wet behind the ears. I'm probably 19, 20 years of age. And I kind of knew who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. It took years before anybody really took me seriously in terms of solving these problems, because why can this little 19, 20-year-old kid ever solve these problems? I don't think he can. And so I wasn't taken terribly seriously. But I did use this analogy, and I used this analogy when speaking from the stage years and years ago, which was the greatest thing I ever learned. I learned on an airplane. I got onto an airplane, and there is this well-appointed woman standing in front of me, and she's giving me instructions. And most people are ignoring the instructions, but because it was my first time on an airplane, I did not ignore the instructions. I was flying from North Carolina to Denver, and Denver on to Aspen as a 20-year-old. And I was very interested in what this woman had to say, because I'm on an airplane for the first time. I'm like, what? Maybe this is important. Anyway, in the event of an emergency, she says, should the cabin become depressurized, oxygen masks will drop down from above you. And here's the important part. Put your own oxygen mask on first, and then assist those around you. Because if you don't put your own oxygen mask on first, you will be lying unconscious and not be able to help those around you. Take care of yourself first. You've got to make sure that you are okay, that you are fed, and that you are slept, and that you are exercised, and that you are meditated, and that you are read, and that you are able to have a satisfying and fulfilling life for yourself. Because independent of that, you're not helping anybody. By not taking care of yourself, you are abusing your husband. By not taking care of yourself, you are abusing your children, your pets, your co-workers.
Right.
You're abusing everyone because you're not bringing your A game. You're not even trying to bring your A game. And you make the excuse, I just don't have time. I just can't. Little Johnny needs me. Well, of course he does. He needs you alive and well and conscious with your own oxygen mask on first so that you are able to help him. But if you don't take care of yourself first, you got nothing to give. So now what you got?
From a woman's perspective, I took this Understanding Men seminar a few years ago because I love the learning of men and women and how they interact and how they're different. I think one of the worst things that a woman can do is treat a man like a dysfunctional woman, because we act and think differently for a reason. And I think that needs to be celebrated aside from, anything else. But in this Understanding Men seminar that we did, the first thing that they did is walked us through the thought process of a woman, because in order to understand the differences, you have to understand yourself. It was a phenomenal seminar. A woman, if she's hungry, and this was something that they used in the seminar, so I can't take credit for it, but a woman, if she's hungry, will go to the kitchen. She'll make her husband something to eat. She'll make her kids something to eat. She might feed the dog a treat. And then with whatever time she has left or energy or whatever, she'll finally make herself a sandwich. That is the biggest mistake that we as women can make. And we all make it. I'm making everybody else a sandwich, and I'm the one that was hungry. And then we turn around and from a relationship perspective, we don't understand why our husband gets hungry and goes to the kitchen and makes himself a sandwich. And then he comes out and he's full and he's ready to go work in the garage or play basketball with the kids, and we're sitting there hungry because he should have treated us the same way. And there's so many different paradigms and so many different beliefs behind what's standing in our way. But ultimately, if you're hungry, go make yourself a sandwich, eat that sandwich, and then take care of everybody else. There's nothing wrong with that.
Or at least find out if after you have had your sandwich and now you are okay, then find out if somebody else wants a sandwich, if you feel the need to provide. You know, people are, when I say people, women are nurturing by nature. And I know that's politically incorrect to say.
But it's true.
Please forget. No, don't say that now. Be careful.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's true. I am a woman, and I'm very proud of my nurturing nature. So I think other women should be as well. PC or not, bless your hearts.
Bless their hearts. There you go. Deep South, bless their hearts.
It all comes back to you can love the people in your life, but you have to love yourself more. And it's okay. You're forgiven. Go ahead and love yourself and treat yourself well, and then turn around and share that love with everyone else. You know, I was listening to, I listen to a lot of Louise Hay's stuff, whether it's books that she sells on her website. I mean, she is the grandmother of positive affirmations and loving yourself and life coaching. And
sure.
I was listening to her. Actually, this morning, there was something that she put out called the 101 Positive Thoughts, and it's just her sharing different positive affirmations and positive thoughts. And I decided to forego listening to the news when I get ready in the morning and listen to something uplifting. And it really just sets my day off well. But there is a part in there that said, until you learn to love yourself, you can't love anyone else. It's codependence. It's addiction. And I thought, oh my gosh, how dare they? That's so off the charts. But if you think about it, when you are looking for someone to love you, to replace self-love, it absolutely is codependency.
That's a good point.
It is. It was profound. And I had to take a step back because at first I was slightly offended because I'm a giving person. I want to see the world happy. I want to see everybody happy, living their dreams, living their life. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this profession. And so when she said that, I was very taken back. I was like, whoa, that's outside of my comfort zone. And then I started thinking about it and the path that my life took through the years of being on this planet and not loving myself and having bad relationships with people, and then getting to that point where I made myself a priority and loving me was more important. I love more now with fewer expectations and fewer requirements than I've ever had before. I'm not perfect. I am no Mother Teresa. But when I love openly and I give freely without any expectation of return. So.
Excellent. And so if you could just love yourself enough to get clear on what you want and then pursue it, don't get bogged down by excuses. Because that's just a back door, a way out. That's just you telling yourself, I don't deserve to have my dreams come true.
Right. I think you have to ask yourself, is this reality or is it my excuse? Every time you have those things pop up, because you will be afraid. Change is, it can be fearful. But you have to ask yourself, is it a reality or is it an excuse? And I promise you 99 times out of 100, it's an excuse, and you work through it. Because once you identify that it's an excuse, you can dismiss it and move past it.
Right. Once you're aware of it, everything changes. Observation changes everything. Mm-hmm. And that excuse is nothing more than you saying, I don't deserve it. You're talking about the lint on your socks or whatever, when you should be just continuing to pursue your goal. Of course there are going to be bumps in the road. Of course there are going to be hurdles to clear. Everything has that. Things not worth having have bumps in the road and hurdles to clear. A life you truly love, of course it's going to be difficult. That's a given. But rather than talk about whatever your story is or whatever your excuse is, whatever the lint on your socks happens to look like, you could replace all of that with, I'm not sure I deserve to be happy, to be loved, to have my dreams come true. I just don't feel like I deserve it. I don't care for myself enough to give myself what I truly want, or oftentimes even admit what I truly want. So then you don't have clarity. You don't have confidence. All you've got is excuses.
But that's not living. That's existing. And we're here to do more than that.
You're absolutely right. You're right, and we're out of time.
All right.
So we will wrap it up and get back together here in 2 or 3 days and do it all again, digging into our innermost secrets and thoughts. So in the meantime, dream your life.
And then live your dreams.
Amen. There you go. Talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.